man becomes a living soul. The connection of those two creates life and intellect and all the good things. Now, when the Lord takes his breath back, the dust goes back to the earth, the breath goes back to God who gave it. Now, Moses has died, Mount Nebo. The Lord wants Moses in heaven. Now, he's already got the breath, because those are the two parts. He now needs the body. He goes down to fetch the body of Moses, and who's standing there with his foot on Moses' grave? Is the devil. And Jesus comes, and his name is Michael. He who is like God contends with the devil about the body of Moses. Let me go back to my previous question. Jesus, the Lord himself, comes with the voice of an archangel, and when he comes, he calls the dead out of the grave. Now, how do we know that God wants Moses in heaven? How do we know that Moses went to heaven? Hey? Have you ever thought of? Think back to the Mount of Transfiguration. What happened there? Right, the Lord took his people there, a couple of them, and there he was. And when he was transformed into at the Mount of Transfiguration, at that moment, who appeared next to him? It was Moses and Elijah. Now, question, did Moses die? Yes. Did Elijah die? No. So what were these two people doing there? Basically, what was being depicted there is the Lord was saying to his people, this is what it's going to be like on the day when I come and fetch my people. There will be those that are dead that will be raised up to be alive again, and there will be those that are alive that will be taken up into heaven. Elijah was taken up into heaven, a type of the antitypical people at the end time. So here, in order to be on the Mount of Transfiguration, in order to have Moses next to Jesus, he needs Moses. He needs the body and the breath. So he's got the breath, now he needs the body. He comes back down to earth, and he says, I want to take Moses' body back home. Right? And there's the devil with his foot on Moses' body, and there's this argument between Michael and the devil. Now today, you dare not call Michael Jesus because they say you worship an angel. No, that's not correct. We are worshiping he who is like God, the only one in the universe that has the ability and the right to call Moses out of the grave. You see, Michael in this depiction is the archangel, the messenger of the highest order, the angel of God, the man of God, being depicted in another form. So we need to understand that basic truth before we can understand the war that took place, which is explained in Revelation 12, verses 7 to 9. And there was war in heaven. Michael, he who is like God, and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels, and prevailed not. Neither was their place found any more in heaven. And that great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. So here's Michael, he who is like God, fighting against the dragon. The same as Michael that was contending with the devil over the body of Moses. This is the same argument, just on a higher level. In heaven, Michael fighting with the devil. But do you remember what Lucifer said? I want to become like God. I will be like the Most High, etc., etc. Now, if I want to take over the seat of government in a country, which I don't, right? If I want to do it, I would need to take over either the president's seat or the prime minister, whoever's the head of the country. And that's the same here. The devil is going for Michael because he's the boss. He's not the he's not the minister of finance. Michael, in this case, is Jesus Christ himself. Now, this Lucifer, remember the word Lucifer is made up of various parts. Lu being light. Cipher being the bearer or the carrier or the protector, the one that covers. In other words, his name Lucifer, meaning the light protector, the light coverer. Now, Lucifer in the Bible is identified as a covering cherub. Take a journey with me into the Most Holy. You'll see the image here as I've put it up for you. And there at the Shekinah glory on the left and on the right are two covering cherubs. Now, Ezekiel 28, 15 to 19 tells us that the Lord said to him, I will cast thee as profane out of the mountain of God, and I will destroy thee, O covering cherub. You see, Lucifer was one of those two covering cherubs in heaven that was supposed to be protecting and covering the Shekinah glory. And as the worship comes up into the Shekinah glory and mixes with the light of God, have you seen when it's rained on the roads and the mist or the steam is coming up off the road, when there's a car coming from the front, how their headlights mix and mingle with the steam? Well, that's what happens as your worship goes up into the most holy. It mingles with the Shekinah glory. And now you've got the covering cherub who's right next to the Shekinah glory, and he sees the worship come in, and he wants it for himself, and he sees, and then it goes to God. And he wants the worship, and it goes to God. And as he was seeing the worship, he said, but look how beautiful I am. And that's the point when vanity entered into his heart, and the rest is history. Now, brothers and sisters, we understand that there's two cherubs on the Ark of the Covenant, right? One which we know is Lucifer. The other one, it looks like, according to Luke 1:19, the other one might be Gabriel, right? It says, I am Gabriel that stands in the presence of God. Well, we don't know whether it's Gabriel, but it looks like it. So, who replaced Lucifer? We don't know. Now remember, if you go to the sanctuary, I explained to you, and just for this series, I want you to remember that the outer court symbolizes earth, and the temple section symbolizes heaven, or the Lord's domain, the earth being Satan's domain. Now, Jesus had to come from heaven and die on the cross at the sacrificial altar. That's why he was. It's why he dies in the outer court, because he comes to earth. Right. So here you have that text, Isaiah 14, verse 12 to 14. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? For thou hast said in thy heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. Now, stars in the Bible are a symbol for angels. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. I will. Lucifer had an I problem. He had an I will problem. And he wanted to become God. And that's where this whole war started, between him wanting to take over the role as president of the universe, as God of the universe. Now we look into the sanctuary and we can see the depiction of this amazing war. You remember that Lucifer, before he falls, is in heaven. And you can see it on the picture. Lucifer breaks the commandments and falls from heaven. But before I show you the next slide, which commandment did Lucifer break? Which one do you think? Well, number 1 says, thou shalt have no other gods before me. And he didn't want to worship God. He wanted himself to be God. So bam, he broke the first commandment. And the 10th one, thou shalt not covet. He wanted the seat of government. So because he breaks those two commandments, Lucifer falls from heaven. He falls spiritually, and speaking in the sanctuary now, from the blue section out, the temple section out into the outer court, which symbolizes the earth. Now remember for a moment that Lucifer covets worship. He wants worship. That's the worship that's going up over the veil and going to the Shekinah glory. He wants that for himself. So the problem in heaven continues on earth. And even in the presence of Jesus. He came to Jesus and he said to Jesus, to you will I give all this authority and glory, if you then will worship me. And Jesus answered him and said, it is written, you shall worship the Lord your God, and him only shall you serve. Right? So the problem in heaven was worship. The problem on earth with the devil is worship. You see, worship is the issue. It's always been the issue, and it will continue to be the issue from Lucifer's perspective as long as time continues. So instead of worshiping God, Lucifer sets up his own worship system. Now, God is worshipped through the sanctuary system. Lucifer, however, turns that around and aims his direction in a new direction, which he then sets up a sun worship religious system. Now, you'll notice in the diagrams that I'm using that the sanctuary is laid out, well, the sanctuary is always laid out east to west, because as you entered the eastern door, you would turn your back on sun worship to face the Shekinah glory, right? So you always, as you're dealing in the sanctuary, you would have your back towards sun worship. Whereas the devil turns that around and says, no, you need to face sun worship. You need to be involved in sun worship. That's